Hello everybody and welcome to episode 11 of Baker's Chatcast, and in today's episode we are joined by Jorvik radio presenter Jamie Morgan, who tells us about his journey in the industry, his love for indie music and also a bit about Middlesbrough. I hope you enjoy. Hello Jamie, thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing canny. Thank you very much, Baker. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks, yeah.
Good. Nice sunny Saturday afternoon when we're doing this.
Yeah, and I'll edit this bit out because the computer just went funny there, buffered. But first of all, today, Jamie, I would like to start off by asking you, as a current presenter on Jorvik Radio, is radio something you have always wanted to do? And if so, how did you get into it?
I guess yes. The short answer is yes. It is something I've always wanted to do. However, didn't think I would get into it. To be honest with you, life has a strange way of playing out. But when I was a kid, I used to do something that was a little bit cheesy. But I used to have in the 80s, I'd have like an old kind of ghetto blaster type thing, twin deck thing, and I would press record, and I would record myself as if I was presenting a radio show called Wavelength, which was really naff and rubbish when I think about it now. And then I would play it in between songs that I'd recorded off the radio. So back then, I always thought that would be something cool to do. But I must admit, at 16, 17, I didn't think that radio is something I would have had a route into. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's a long, boring story. But essentially, how I got into it, a lot of perseverance, a little bit of luck, and I basically started writing for publications up in Newcastle. In particular, I used to live in Newcastle for many years. It was an old magazine from the noughties called Get Rhythm, and I used to write and go and watch gigs and review CDs and stuff for them. And then did a little bit more, and then fast forward to I moved down to Yorkshire. And Rick Witter, as you know, he presented his original Disco Down show on the old Minster FM. And I used to listen to that every week. And then one week he talked about the fact that he was going to potentially extend the show, and he said, has anyone got any ideas of what we do with that third hour? And he does the demo of the week for fans. So I thought I'd email him and say, well, would you be up for somebody like myself coming on and doing some reviews? Because I shared with him examples of what I'd done. And Rick, being the most canny gentleman in the world, like one of the nicest guys, like there is, let alone nicest guy in music, if you like. He just said, yeah, he didn't know me. He was like, we'll give it a go. If it doesn't work out, doesn't matter. He was like, if it's rubbish, we'll call it a day after like 1 or 2 weeks kind of thing. And the rest, as they say, is history. Kind of that opened the doors to me doing lots of smaller radio work. And now, kind of 5 or so years later, I present the show on a Sunday morning on Jorvik Radio, Jams Brunch Punch, and then on a night, obviously. I help produce Rick's show, and I'm kind of his fall guy on a Sunday night from 7 till 9. So yeah, I think a lot of it is perseverance, sticking at it, but sometimes you need a bit of luck, and I'm very lucky.
So off the back of that, working with Rick, is that how you managed to get your own show, Jams Brunch Bunch?
No, because what happened is I didn't. Yeah, it's a bit of it's probably not an exciting story, but I think some of it, as I said, between that period of, because Rick stopped doing that back in 2016, so between that period and him restarting, I worked on some radio stuff, made some friends, connections over that period, and yeah, did some kind of radio work, and when Jorvik Radio started, I got in touch with the station, and obviously I'd made some connections who were involved in the station as well. Had a few kind of conversations, an interview with one of the main guys there, and yeah, we set it up for me to start last January, so 2020, and yeah, just took it from there. I didn't know exactly how long it was going to last, but yeah, a year and a bit on, and got some regular listeners, regular features. It feels like the show's doing well. So yeah, I'm very, very lucky.
Obviously, your show Jams Brunch Bunch. If I'm right, it's 10 till 12 on a Sunday morning, and
Yeah.
it's part of the Indie All Day, and you play some of your favourite indie songs. Could you
Yeah.
tell people a little bit more about what your show features in that?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, as you rightly said, it's the Indie All Day on Jorvik Radio. So it starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, runs through till 9. So Rick kind of headlines it.
Yeah.
He's used to. He's a good headliner, isn't he? So he just 7 till 9. I come in 10 till 12, and I just like to play music that A, I love, and B, even if you've not heard of the song, if you like indie alternative music that time of the morning, it's radio that I think people would enjoy, and it's entertaining. The music is entertaining. Whether you want to hear my northeastern dulcet tones on a Sunday morning, I don't know. But I've got a couple of different features, so I always try and mix it up. I say sometimes I like to play the classics because obviously everyone likes to hear songs that they're familiar with. I like to play new music, so I try and put 2 or 3 songs that might have come out that week, or albums that have come out that week, that you might not have heard of. And there's a guy on Twitter, New Indie Sounds. He shares a track every Friday with me. It's kind of his pick of the new tunes that's come out, so that's quite good. And we call that the early bird catches the new music earworm, because I like to come up with random titles. Then we have the breakfast serial killer track, about 10:30. So that's the idea, is it's a song that's going to kind of get you out of bed, wake you up with a bang. We have We Do Like to Be Beside the B-side, where I play a B-side and you have to guess what the A-side was. And then we have album of the week, and then we end the show with the big indie sing-along. So I like to think of it as feel-good music, just entertaining stuff. If you were doing the garden on a Sunday morning, or if you were at work, or if you just want to chill out after a heavy night out or night in nowadays, wake up with a hangover, it's that kind of music that you can just, it's feel-good, uplifting stuff.
Because I can relate to what you've said there, because me wanting to have like a career in radio myself, purely the reason for that is because I love music, and I think it's probably just, like you said as well, a great thing to do if you're really into music, because just playing your favourite music all the time as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And anyone who's known me knows I talk about music and sport a lot.
Yeah.
They're the kind of things that I talk, but music in particular. I remember I once worked up in Newcastle, and I worked with a lad who was a cartoonist, and he once drew a cartoon of the team, and I had a T-shirt in the cartoon, and in the T-shirt it said, "Name of band I'd heard of way before you had," or something like that. But that was him summing up how I used to talk about stuff all the time. I'd be like, "Oh, you need to hear this band. You need to hear this band." So yeah, to be able to do that every week for 2 hours and play stuff that I like and I think you'll like, that's a privilege. And and especially over the last year as well. Radio as a medium, I think, is something that people have started listening to more and more, because there's only so much TV you can take. There's only so much, if you are lucky enough to be living with family or friends and not living by yourself, then there's only so much conversations you can have with those people. Yeah. If you're living by yourself, and I appreciate there's a lot of people gone through a really tough time over the last 12 months, particularly if you're living on your own. Hopefully that window to the world and listening to the radio has brought people, I'm not saying that my show's the greatest and they'll have loved that, but playing tunes and songs that might be familiar to them and will remind them of nice memories and things like that. Hopefully I'm part of a much bigger thing that's helped people to get through.
And as you've stated earlier on the evening too, Rick Witter, who actually did come on here last week and was a brilliant guest, and we spoke about the Disco Down show. You co-host it with him, as you've said, and as most people will know who listen to the show.
I think it's very much Rick's the main man on the show. I say I feel very privileged and honoured to be alongside him. I help produce in the background. But yeah, I would say I'm his fall guy. I wouldn't say I'm his co-host. I think it's definitely Rick's show.
what I was going to ask was, how do you find it working with Rick? Because when I listen on a Sunday night, it seems like you have great banter and stuff, and it sounds like you do have good chemistry hosting it together. How do you find it working alongside him?
Excuse me. Sorry. No, it's very nice of you to say so. I love it. Absolutely love it. If you'd said to the kind of 16, 17-year-old me who was buying the likes of Bully Boy on cassette in Woolies, do you know what I mean? That 20 odd years later, I'd be sat like next to, like opposite, like the main man, like talking nonsense, because it is nonsense. Let's be honest. 2 hours of it, I never know where the conversation's going to go. Yeah, as I said, I mentioned earlier, it's a little bit of luck, and I was very lucky that Rick listened to me all those years ago and said, "Yeah, we'll give you a chance." And we don't. It's not like we don't particularly speak outside of those 2 hours. So I think it's that interesting. I think we come in like 6:30, 7:15, have a bit of a chat. We'll email through the week around songs, and then we that's the show, and then we say goodbye and I'll see you next week, kind of thing. So it's interesting that you mentioned the chemistry, because I've had a few people say it feels like we get on, and it feels like that comes across.
And you do play a few games. You've got the song word game, and something he's actually made you do, where a song that's being played, he makes you send a tweet out to that band or artist.
Yes, he has. I think there's only one artist come back, hasn't there? The bigger bands, they don't seem to be too interested in the likes of me tweeting them and saying I've just discovered a song on Rick Witter's Disco Down. But yeah, we'll keep doing it. I like the way Rick comes up with concepts, and then we'll see them through, and we'll see week on week. But that's what makes good entertaining radio or TV. It's like, I think you need those regular features that people are going to connect with, and they'll come back and say, "Oh yeah, what's it going to be this week?" Because that would be for me listening in. And like I said, I started off as a listener of Rick Witter's Disco Down. I used to be one of the people who was texting in and tweeting in every week on the word game and stuff like that. So yeah, I get the appeal.
Because I think the best radio shows, as a listener, are the ones that have that interaction with the public and have that bit of banter. Because some radio shows just like play the music, the presenter will just say about the song stuff. But I think the best ones are the ones that do interact and have that little bit of banter.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think one of my mates said to me not long after I did radio, like I started the show, he said, "You sound like really authentic." He said it sounds like the Jamie I've always known, but just on the radio. And for me, I thought that was probably the best compliment I could get, because it's that you want the people I like listening to, either on radio, on TV, or whatever, are the people that you can identify with and connect with and go, actually, it sounds like that. You get that naff saying, don't you, on reality shows where they go, "Are you being yourself?" and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think something about being your authentic self when you're doing it. So, I mean, how do you find it when obviously you're presenting this and you want to get into radio and that kind of thing? Is that something that you're aware of? I'm just curious.
Because because I do always wonder what do people think when they've watched this back, like what do they think of like the videos and stuff. I do always wonder what people are thinking when they've seen these and stuff like that, because you want to almost feel like yourself, don't you, when you're doing it, and you want to make sure you're doing the best you can. And I always do wonder what people have thought after they've watched these.
But I think as long as you're happy with the final product, I think that's half the battle, isn't it? If you can finish each interview or each kind of putting it together after you've edited it, etc. If that's something that you can go, like, I'm proud of that and I'm putting it out to the world. If it's seen by like 20 people or 2,000 people, I don't think in the short term that doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean? You want people going to pick up and go, "Do you know what? I really like that." So yeah, I that's the one thing that I've always tried to, for all. I mean, let's be honest, I'm not like major famous like radio DJ by any stretch, but with what I do, even if I was, I don't think I would want to do anything any different.
Yeah.
Because some people say, "Oh, would you love to be?" And it would never happen. Would you love to be on like a big radio station? And part of me thinks, yeah, that would be fun. But I bet they're not allowed to play what songs they want to play. I bet they have tight playlists that they have to. So basically, if you ask certain DJs what their favorite bands and albums are, they probably don't translate into the music that they play because they're being produced and told what to do. So there's something about that freedom of doing kind of smaller radio and being in control of your playlists.
Because that's something I've always thought, because on these big stations like BBC One, BBC Two, they get told what to play, but you on Jorvik, is that like something you just get to pick the songs that you want to play?
I mean, there is a Jorvik radio playlist, so there are, particularly our daytime shows, we have a music panel that will pick songs, and most shows, particularly Monday to Friday during the day, they'll be kind of in the playlist. So, but on a week, particularly after 6 o'clock, after 7 o'clock, we have specialist shows, and on a weekend, like the Indie All Day, I think pretty much everybody on the Indie All Day, to my knowledge, picks their own music and picks their own playlist. So if you're a fan of indie alternative music, if you listen from like 8 in the morning through till 9, you'll probably hear classic, as I said, classics that you know and love, but also a big focus on new music, and particularly like local music. That's something I think as a station we're really proud of, to like champion local bands like in and around the York area, but local expands kind of beyond just York, like it's Yorkshire, it's the northeast. So I mean, I detect obviously by your accent that you're obviously similar parts to myself. I was kind of County Durham and a Borough fan, and that kind of thing. But there's an artist called Jodie Nicholson who I played recently. She's from Darlington. I would class that as a kind of local music, although we're in York and stuff. So yeah.
And obviously you do that, don't you, on Demo of the Week on Disco Down?
Yeah.
Which I mentioned on Rick's show, when he came on this, if anyone wanted to send a song, and I'd leave the email for them below. And if they've listened to you as well, they can go back to that video. And
definitely, yeah. I mean, I think I would say if you're in a band, or if you just want to get into whatever it is, ask a few questions, drop a few emails. You might get, I mean, I've had quite a few knockbacks over the years from people who've either just not responded at all or come back and gone, no, not interested, sorry. That's what happens with people. But if you keep asking and you keep asking the questions and you don't get offended or upset by the knockbacks, then at some point you'll meet the right person, or you'll come across the right person or organisation that'll say, well, why don't you come in and we'll have a chat? Or nowadays in the virtual world, it's easy. Why don't we just jump on a Zoom call and chat for 20 minutes? And someone might be able to help, or they might be able to point you in the right direction of something. So yeah, I would never be. So the Demo of the Week's a classic example of how Rick's kind of putting it out there for people to be able to share their music, which I think is a brilliant thing. Getting that exposure and putting it, like having your song heard on the radio. How exciting is that?
Obviously, everybody that knows you are massively into your indie music. But what I want to know is, Jamie, is there any moment in your life when you've heard one song that sort of like defined your love for the music indie scene?
That is a big question, a very big question. I think if you asked me, didn't you, what my favourite indie songs were? One of them, I think I'll kind of bring that one forward. It's kind of History by the Verve, I think, will always be a song that it just stands out for me. Like, I remember where I was the first time I heard it. I heard the single version first, and I was like, wow, amongst the Britpop scene at the time. And Verve I don't class as Britpop, but right at that time, it was around the Britpop scene. And Oasis, Blur, Supergrass, Sleeper, Elastica, Shed 7, all of those bands playing. And then you got, and again, I'm not saying all those bands are Britpop, but they were caught up in that scene, whether they liked it or not. And then just to hear the strings on the Verve History was like, wow, what's this? Stopping your tracks. And then went on and got the album A Northern Soul, which is one of my all-time favorites. If you've got A Northern Soul, Vic, have you heard that album?
Yeah, and what I was going to say was, it is off A Northern Soul, as you said. It's a little bit of a different one, isn't it? Because when people think of the Verve, they think Bittersweet Symphony or just anything off Urban Hymns. But A Northern Soul is not one that too many people who aren't too familiar with the Verve will have come across.
Yeah, but it's one that they should stop what they're doing right now. We always joke on the radio, it's like, stop it, like after 9 o'clock, do it. So after this Chatcast, put it on. Just search it, put it in, and the first 3 tracks of A Northern Soul are arguably the greatest start to any album ever. And then History comes up in the second half. But it's not the most happy album. I'm not gonna lie. If you're not gonna play it and feel like really happy on a summer's day. But there's something powerful about the whole thing. It's really good.
Just like the music just like the power of the music in it that just makes it a good song.
Oh yeah, I've listened to that album through good times, bad times, all those cheesy cliches, mate. But yeah, that I would say if you ask for like a definitive song, there's probably a number of different moments along the way, as in anyone's life. But I would say the Verve History and then A Northern Soul, definitely. And
as Jamie says, you can listen to 3 tracks when you finish watching this video to people watching. Your next song is Jeff Buckley, Lover You Should Have Come Over.
Yeah. Look, again, it's Jeff. I'm going to sound like someone who just listens to depressive music, and if you listen to my show 10 till 12, I'm the exact opposite. I play like highly positive stuff, but there is something about wallowing while listening to your tunes. No, I'm joking. Jeff Buckley's album Grace, again, it's, if you're into that kind of indie alternative music, it's something that you have to listen to, and it's one of those cliches. People are a bit like, oh yeah, you say you like Jeff Buckley Grace, everyone says that. But around the time it was out, I remember like picking up on it and just again being blown away by it. MTV2 used to be on at the time, and they'd play quite a few tracks, and then a lot of bands as well in the early noughties. You'd get bands who'd come on and pick their favourite songs, and they would always reference Jeff Buckley. I think he's had a lot of influence on like indie bands that we know and love. But Love You Should Have Come Over is just a fantastic tune lyrically, and it's just a really powerful piece. Although I also heard the worst cover version I've ever heard. And yeah, I don't like to kind of slate people or anything like that, because music's personal choice and stuff, but Jamie Cullum did a version of it, which fortunately my ears have only heard once, and I wouldn't want to hear it again. But each to their own and all that.
We have to hope he's not listening, which I doubt he will be.
Yeah, I mean, if he is listening, I'm not saying it's a rubbish version. I'm just saying I personally didn't like it. And if you like Jamie Cullum, then it might be worth listening to both versions and making your own mind up, I guess.
I think we might be okay on that one, though. I don't think he'll be listening to my podcast.
Hey, you never know. He could stumble across it by accident or whatever, but hey, who knows?
Your next one is a song which I hadn't actually heard until you sent me it, and I thought it was quite a good song. The Rap by the Walkman.
See, this is why I love doing stuff like this, having a radio show. It's just putting songs out there. I mean, I don't make them. That's the thing. Like, it's almost like we're a load of frauds, people who just play other people's music, because these people are the true artists, aren't they, who make stuff. And the Walkman are a great band anyway, but The Rat is just one of those songs that you just have to play like every time. If I'm having just a night of playing cracking tunes on a weekend, or like kitchen parties, house parties, because no one can go out anymore, The Rat will always feature. Such a brilliant song, and the lyrics as well are very, very apt for this time now. Because basically, who goes out anymore? So but yeah, if you're not, again, if you're watching this and you've never heard that song, definitely add that to your list for after this is finished.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have a playlist or homework of these are songs you should listen to after you've watched it. Put it in the comments below.
In the description.
Aye, do that.
The next one is "You Set the Scene" by Love.
Yeah, great album again. I'm aware that I'm sounding like a cliche, possibly from some people who might be watching this, but these normally the classics are classics for a reason. I tend to say this to people. It's like, if you're going to play the classics because they're that good. Songs in the main don't get that popular by being a little bit rubbish, if that makes sense. But Love Forever Changes is an album I first discovered. I must have been. I went for a night out with one of my mates, stayed over at theirs, and then a couple of weeks later, he came into work and said, "Oh, here's that album you really liked." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he handed me like "Love Forever Changes," and I said, "What do you mean? I've never heard this before." And he says, "No, you did." He said, "You were around mine the other week when you were kind of a little bit worse for wear." He said, "You said that this was the best thing you'd ever heard." I was like, "Oh, really?" And I went home and listened to it, and I was blown away by it. I was like, so clearly when I'm a little bit inebriated and worse for wear, my music taste is still good. but yeah, that album is fantastic, and You Set the Scene is just one of those tracks that I could listen to any time of day, really.
And your final one that you sent me, I've saved this to last because this would be probably in my top 10 songs, "Slide Away" by Oasis.
Yeah, I mean, and I purposely put this one in because for all the lovers, all the haters of Oasis or whatever, you can't deny that the impact that definitely maybe had on the music scene and the impact that Oasis as a band had on the whole culture. And I was lucky enough to live and be the right age, I think, to kind of witness the like mid-late 90s music and stuff like that. Been lucky enough to see Oasis a couple of times. But there's something about Slide Away that again, if it's a sunny day, that is arguably the most uplifting song around for me. It just gets me buzzing, hair stand on end stuff. And I purposely put it in as well so that people didn't just think, bloody hell, he's got really depressive music taste, because I don't. I like really uplifting, happy stuff as well. But yeah, brilliant song.
And I think with Oasis, I don't know about you, but I imagine you might be the same, but most of the songs by Oasis, the ones that I like the best, I like the album tracks of definitely maybe like Columbia, all them type of songs, rather than like the big hits that everybody knows, like Wonderwall and Don't Look Back in Anger. But don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they aren't good songs, but I would rather listen to the album tracks on Oasis's albums.
No, I would agree. I would absolutely agree. And I think that's something that Rick does quite well. He picks, on a Sunday night, he picks a lot of album tracks and songs that you might not be familiar with. But a lot, like, singles is picked as singles for a reason, but quite often you've got, like, record companies making that decision and saying that we think that's the right song, etc. But artists, if they make an album, they're not putting any filler on there, are they? They're putting a collection of songs that they've picked from a bigger collection and gone, we think these kind of 10, 11, 12 or however many tracks are spot on. So quite often album tracks are the best, I think.
Because the amount of Oasis fans that favourite song of theirs is Columbia. Yeah.
No, it's a cracking tune, isn't it?
And it's definitely one of the best on Definitely Maybe.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt, yeah.
Switching subject now, obviously you are a Borough fan as well as me.
Yes.
I want to ask you, this could go either way. What are your thoughts on the season so far?
Let's be honest, if we went back 12 months ago, mate, we'd take every day of the week. And that's what I say to everybody, because people are going, oh, it looks like you're going to blow the playoffs. And I'm like, well, we might not make the playoffs, but this time last year, if you'd said we'd stay in the championship and we'd be playing interesting, exciting football that's getting me out of my seat again, even at home, and shouting at the telly and getting like inspired by it, then I would have taken it every day of the week. And I think that's what I mean. I'm a big fan of Warnock. I know some people aren't. And that was even before like over the years, I've watched him at different clubs. And I quite like what he does. I like the way he gets into the skin of things, and he certainly knows what he's doing. And I think even if we don't go up, which is unlikely, I don't think we'll go up this season. But the fact that he's signed on for next year and he's got some people to move on and he's starting to shape the team more, we've had some exciting games to watch. And that's all you can, as a fan, that's the most important, isn't it? Because you're never going to win. You're never going to, nowadays especially, you're never going to win the Premier League. You're probably not going to win the FA Cup. So why not just have, on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis, you want a couple of games that you're excited about, that if as and when people go back to the games, that you go, oh, I think we've got a chance today. Whereas for the last couple of years, even when we've won, we've not been particularly exciting to watch, have we?
Because I can totally agree with you there, because Warnock has just come in his first season, obviously, this year. Well, he came in for a bit last season, but it was only for the remaining few games. But if you look at the way he's transformed us, because last season we obviously finished 17th, didn't we, under Woodgate, which was a horrid season to watch before we were able to not go anymore. But you just have to look at what he's done, and it's been a massive improvement. Even if we don't make the playoffs, finishing 8th to 17th that previous season is a massive improvement. And
without a doubt.
And we've had some exciting games, as you've said as well, because I don't know about you, but just the last few seasons have been awful to watch. So, like that year under Pulis, that season 2016 in the Prem, and then that season under Woodgate, we've had some bad years.
Yeah, we have. And I don't knock Woodgate either, to be fair.
Yeah.
I personally don't think he was ready for the job. I don't think he was the right guy for the job. And I don't deny that he probably put his heart and soul into it. And I wish him luck. I think he's doing all right at Bournemouth, to be honest. With a decent, but I think he's got a decent squad. But I think he'll have learnt a lot. But yeah, I think we have had some poor stuff. I mean, I'd love to rewind back to the Premier season when we're in the Premier League, because I think if we changed things and done things differently, I think some average sides in the Premier League, and I think we could have stayed up, and then it would have been a different story. But anyway, we're as a Borough fan, I've watched us win a trophy, and I've watched us get to a European final. I mean, I think I'll die a happy man as a Borough fan, because in the grand scheme of things, your Man United, your Liverpools of this world, they're used to winning stuff, they expect it. But a little club from Teesside, people don't expect them to do stuff like that.
Because if we were there right now, despite the position we are currently in the table, I think we'd have enjoyed this season, because just the fact of that football we were playing, exciting football, just it's what we've been wanting as fans for years, and we finally got that. And hopefully under Warnock next season we'll be able to see a bit of that, and even maybe finish in the playoffs next season.
Yeah, well, you never know with Warnock. He's got a brilliant record in the Championship, hasn't he? And he'll have an eye on what he needs to do to get us up there. But yeah, and a few of my friends have said, what do you think the chances are of Newcastle, Middlesbrough and Sunderland all being in the Championship next season? I mean, if that happened, it'd be a very, very interesting year ahead, wouldn't it?
And it's looking very likely at the minute as well, because Newcastle have been sucked right into it, and Sunderland look like they could get promoted, so it may happen.
I mean, that would be really, wouldn't it? Just, I know you would, ideally you'd want that to be taking place in the Premier, but if it happens in the Championship next season, I think we'll get a lot more attention. So, but yeah, bring it on. I think if we'd had this conversation a year ago, I'd have been talking about doom and gloom and relegation, but we're not. So I think let's take that and see what happens next.
Is there anything you think Borough may need to challenge more high up next season? Obviously, you've got the lads like Balassi and Cabano who have signed on loan for the remainder of this season. Is there anything you think for next season that may need improving? Because I could tell you for a fact that I think we need a striker.
Well, I think that's the same ever since the best striker we've had at this club for 5-6 years was Patrick Bamford, and I still don't know why we sold him. But we did. And for me, I think it's the style of play as well, and I think Warnick's slowly turning that around. For all I loved Karanka, and he did some brilliant things with us, his style of play wasn't attacking particularly, and I think we've suffered from that for however many years. And not many clubs play like the likes of two up top and stuff like that and play attacking football. The amount of times Borough put a ball into the box and there's one person there, and you just think, well, if there was another striker there, what would have happened? Yeah, like I said, I don't want to be rambling on about football. It might be boring for people listening in talking about me, but I think strikers definitely is that. I think everywhere else in the park, I think we've got some decent players. Possibly because obviously we've only got a lone keeper. We probably could do with a decent keeper permanently, and then one or two. Like I think Fletcher's, if we can keep hold of him, I think Fletcher was coming good before his injury. But let's just start playing two up top, get it interesting.
Finally, Jamie, it's been a pleasure to have you on today. It's been great. And my final question is, what would you like to see from Borough next season?
Well, more the same really, but perhaps definitely playoffs, I think, and then just see what happens from there. But if we can get some decent attackers, if we can avoid injuries, which is always the luck of the draw, isn't it? But let's pray that we can have a packed Riverside again, fans being allowed to go back to football matches, and that lifting the team and getting a few goals in regularly, just entertaining football and see what happens.
Definitely. Massive thank you to Jamie for giving us his time today and talking to us. I hope you've enjoyed it. See you next week.